Okay, hi guys. So from this lecture, we'll be discussing on very important concept, which is Lee-Chatelier's principle. So let's get started on the same. So we have Lee-Chatelier's principle. Chatelier's principle. Okay. So whenever we change reaction conditions means those conditions that can actually influence the equilibrium state. The equation actually rather the reaction actually shifts in that direction, either forward or backward, wherever there was the effect of change. Okay, so that this auto change can actually reverse that or nullify that additional change which have been um, which was actually put down by an external factor onto the reaction, external factor or external agent. Okay, so this was our reaction. Okay, so this was a closed vessel, rather. So external factor can be a pressure change or temperature change, or can be volume change also. We can actually increase the volume also of the container. So many such type of external factors can actually um, exist, or these external things we can actually tweak on the onto the reaction mixture, so that the formed equilibrium will actually shift, or we are basically breaking the state of equilibrium. So while we are breaking the equilibrium state, what will the reaction automatically, or rather automatically, do is it will again try to nullify those effect of change on itself. Okay, so let me put it down in good words, that whenever we change reaction conditions, means those conditions those that can affect state of equilibrium, equilibrium shifts in that direction where the effect of change gets minimized or nullified. Okay, so keeping in mind that the number of moles or concentration, uh, or better volume, is constant. Okay, so let's discuss, keeping in mind this factor when we are actually changing some of the reaction conditions, keeping in mind the number of moles and volume constant. Then first changes, what if we add some more reagent or reactant, addition of reactant. So this can also be called as, or we can also do what is known as removal of product. So in this case, what will happen is equilibrium shifts in forward direction. And why is this the case? Because obviously when we are increasing the concentration, or rather we are adding more reactants into the mixture, then obviously what will happen is K equivalent would decrease. So more number of product has to be formed in order to again rescale K equivalent back to its original value. Okay, second point we are trying to see here is what happens when we remove a reactant, or in other words we add some product. So equilibrium shifts in backward direction. Okay, so here we are actually changing the number of moles here, and the concentration is also changing, but we are keeping volume constant. I might have told earlier that we are not changing number of moles. No, that's wrong. I'm sorry for that. We are changing the number of moles here. That's why we are adding adding or removing some products, but the volume is constant. Okay. Second point here is, or second condition here is, what about changes in pressure conditions? So let's say we are increasing or decreasing pressure. So first let's take pressure. What happens when pressure increases? Or in other words, we can say that volume decreases. So in this case, if a point can be, if delta ng is 0, then we can say that there would be no effect. Why? Because if you see, Kp will be equal to, as delta ng equals to 0, then Kp would be Kc RT delta ng. Okay, or in other words we can say that Kp would be dependent on partial pressure of products. Let's say C and D were products here, so partial pressure of C, partial pressure of D divided by partial pressure of A and B, and partial pressure would be nothing but Xc into Xd divided by Xa into Xb times total pressure delta ng. So we have also seen that Kp equals to Kx, where Kx is the equilibrium constant for mole fraction, P delta ng. So Kx would not be changing. This is our rather this I can write it as some constant term. So let's this be C small c and P to the power delta ng. Okay, so this is the Kp. So this C is constant. When delta ng is 0, Kp would not be changing, so it would not have any effect. What happens if delta ng is positive? If delta ng is positive, then this Qp, which is Cp delta ng, so Qp is the equilibrium constant at any state of the reaction, not just at equilibrium. This is at equilibrium, and this is at any point of time. Qp is Cp delta ng. So as delta ng is increasing, obviously Qp is going greater than Kp. This implies that reaction will go in backward direction so as to minimize the products formed. So if the number of products formed or the partial pressure of products formed would decrease, then actually Qp will go back and re-emerge with Kp value. Kp value is fixed and constant, that is the equilibrium state. Okay, so if delta ng is greater than 0, then equilibrium shifts in backward direction. More number of reactants would be getting formed. And C point is, what if delta ng is negative? Now if delta ng is negative, Qp gets lesser than Kp. So in a sense, to restore the original state, more number of products would be formed, hence equilibrium will shift in forward direction. Okay. So let's see another point. What happens when pressure decreases? pressure decreases, or we can say volume increases. So again we will have three conditions in which first delta ng is let's say 0. So if delta ng is 0, we know that Kp would be equals to C times P to the power delta ng. Okay, so and we can also write Qp as another constant C dash, but again depending on the P raised to power delta ng. So when delta ng is 0, Kp would be constant at the means it would have the current value itself, so no change, so no effect on equilibrium. Second point is what happens when delta ng is positive. Now delta ng is positive and pressure is decreasing, so this implies that Qp would go lesser than Kp, so as a result more products would be getting formed, hence the equilibrium will be shifting in forward direction. Shifts in forward direction. Okay, next let's see what happens when delta ng is negative. So delta ng is negative and the pressure is decreasing, so this implies that Qp goes higher than Kp. Why am I saying this? So I just took some hypothetical example in my mind wherein I took delta ng as -1, and so if delta ng is -1, I will write Qp as C divided by P, and when pressure is going means pressure is decreasing, then Qp would be getting increased, hence Qp would be going more than Kp. So in this case what will happen is equilibrium will shift in backward direction. And why would this be the case? Because so as to restore or get back the Qp raised value to the original equilibrium value. Okay, so what is our conclusion based on the above understandings? So conclusions can be that when pressure increases, equilibrium shifts towards lesser number of moles, and when pressure decreases, equilibrium shift towards more number of moles. Okay, so if pressure increases, equilibrium shifts towards lesser number of moles, and when pressure decreases, equilibrium shifts towards more number of moles. Okay, so why it is the case here? Because we saw the first case wherein we were increasing the pressure, and while on increasing the pressure we saw that if the delta ng was positive, then the reaction was going towards the backward direction, so in a way it was going towards lesser number of moles. Okay, and when we were increasing the pressure and when the delta ng was negative, that means that equilibrium was shifting towards equilibrium shifts towards forward direction. Okay, and why was that the case? Because delta ng was negative, and so let me rewrite it again, that when pressure was increasing and delta ng was negative, so this implies that reaction was going in forward direction or going towards lesser number of moles. Why am I saying lesser number of moles? Because if you see this case, Qp becomes lesser than Kp when pressure is increasing and delta ng is negative. That implies Qp is lesser than Kp. So this implies that more number of reactants have to decompose or break their bonds and form products. so as to reshift the um, KP level back to the QP level back to the KP level. Hence, reactants were having more number of moles in this case. That's why they are forming products which had less number of moles. Hence, reaction was moving towards lesser number of moles, or rather equilibrium shifts towards lesser number of moles. While in a case when P was decreasing and delta Ng was positive, let's say, so in that case what will happen is, so again QP would go lesser than KP, okay, and or rather QP will go more than KP. So am I writing this right? No, the previous one was right only, wherein QP was getting lesser than KP. Okay, so why is this the case? Because P proportional to other QP is proportional to P to the power delta Ng, and as delta Ng is positive and P is decreasing, that implies QP is decreasing. Okay, so reaction will go in forward direction again, from reactants to products. And why will the equilibrium shift towards more number of moles? Goes towards more number of moles. Why? Because delta Ng is positive. That means number of moles of products in gaseous phase is more than the number of moles of reactants. Hence, when I say that reactants convert into products, so more number of moles are getting formed of products. Okay, so that's a let me write down one simple note here, that according to the ideal gas equation PV equals to nRT, so it's natural that when pressure increases, then concentration of every gas increases. Okay, so and we can also say that concentration of gas, or gases rather, at new equilibrium would be more than concentration of gases at old equilibrium. But still the KQ or KP would still remain the same, because that's a ratio of products concentration to reactants concentration. So the concentrations adjust themselves in such a way that KP remains constant, but all of them increases at increase in pressure. So with this note, we come to the end of this lecture. In the next lecture, we'll be seeing more examples on the same. So till then, good luck and goodbye.